Hey folks, Cool18 here, and welcome to a video where we look at the patch notes for Europa Universalis 4 version 1.16. This is the patch that is being released alongside the Mare Nostrum expansion. As always, there is some content that is part of the expansion, but there is a lot of content that is part of this free patch. And this is super relevant for my Lubeck game, because I was playing the Lubeck game pre-release of the game, but on this patch, on what should become patch 1.16, but I didn't have these patch notes before, so there were a lot of features that I was not aware of yet, and it's actually going to have some pretty big, a pretty big impact on our Lubeck game, because I'm reading through these notes, I'm like, oh really? Holy crap, that's going to dramatically change my strategy. So let's go ahead and take a quick glance here. The first section is the expansion features. These are the features that you actually do need to purchase the expansion to have access to. Barbary nations can raid for slaves with their ships, so these are North African nations that that would have this historically. It was a big problem, especially in in southern Europe or the northern coast of the Mediterranean. Well, I guess it was probably a problem in a lot of places, but I've read a lot of historical books, and you know, this was something they had to deal with all the time, which is pretty interesting. Don't know how it works in game. I mean, it's pretty generic. Raid for slaves, their ships. I don't know what that converts to. Is it manpower? Is it money? What does it do? Don't know actually, but it would be fun to play a North African nation. Apparently, Barbary is the term Barbary is derived from the term Berber, and most people who have played EU4 are aware of like the Berbers, the Berber tradition, those nations there. You can steal map with spy actions. Now, it doesn't specify here if you need the espionage ideas to do it. And I think it would be handy if you didn't, because the number of countries that care about stealing maps, i.e. are doing exploration, or rather are doing colonization perhaps without the exploration ideas. So countries that are doing colonization and have the opportunity to grab espionage ideas might be a bit low, so it might be good if it's the sort of thing that's available to everyone, but I don't know, maybe it should only be espionage ideas, I'm not sure. New diplomatic action to share maps, although apparently an AI who is actively doing colonial stuff is very unlikely to want to share maps with you, which makes sense. We've got the naval missions that we've looked at before. Basically, they work a lot like the trade missions and the hunting missions and those sorts of things, but now they've expanded to different things so that you can attack other ships automatically or blockade coasts automatically, which is handy. Unconditional surrender option is interesting. I think this is going to be something that probably comes up more in multiplayer, where players are often a little bit more aggressive and also may try to do manipulations of like sort of peace deals and occupations and things for different purposes. With unconditional surrender, you instantly have all of your provinces be occupied by your opponent in the war, and you get 100% war score, or they get 100% war score against you instantly. But if they don't send you a peace demand within 2 months, then they get a call to peace right away, and it's going to be gained at twice the normal rate. So it really says that's your give up button, and it forces really your opponent to like, okay, work out a peace deal now, not just like sit in all your occupied territory and be a big jerk face or something like that. You can unconditionally surrender to the AI, but apparently the AI currently does not unconditionally surrender, which I think is fine. Major reworked espionage. So anyone who's watched any of the videos have seen this already. You send diplomats to build up a spy network, which seems to tick up maybe a couple of points per month, maybe a little bit more than that. I'm not exactly sure what the rate was. And then you can spend the points that you've accrued from 0 to 100 on specific actions, including things like fabricate a claim. So as a result, fabricating a claim is instantaneous, but it does take a while to build up the spy network. Fabricating a claim seems a little fast. It only takes a spy network of 10 to do. And as far as I can tell, there's no way to get caught at espionage until you cross 25-point spy network. So now, fabricating the claim, you should never get caught. So it's quite a bit faster than before, and doesn't seem to generate any aggressive expansion. Mostly, I like this whole new spy network thing. It's quite cool. And even if does it specify here? Doesn't specify. Oh, right here. If you have a spy network in another country, even if you're not using it for spy actions, it does give you a boost to your siege ability. So you siege faster if you have a spy network, and also aggressive expansion is less noticeable Not so this bonus to aggressive expansion isn't in the country that you're conquering. It's in neighboring countries. You can build a spy network in neighboring countries to have them be less bothered by your expansion. And then, yeah, study technology has changed. So, like, a little bit of changes all over to espionage, which I think seems quite cool. Plus, there's some extra espionage actions as well. So some of these actions, you need the espionage ideas, which have been revamped and do seem to be more potent. I think the espionage ideas, I think spying is stronger now, and I do like that. You do get the hunt pirate missions, even if you don't have El Dorado. Yeah, you can set naval behavior, like how likely they are to, or how quickly they will go repair, and also whether or not they're avoiding combat. You can rent out some of your troops to other countries. I haven't done this yet. It seems like it'll probably be interesting. I really see this as an interesting move in multiplayer in particular, so I'm looking forward to that. When you occupy coastal provinces, you get their sailors added to your sailor pool. So instead of just manpower now, there's also a pool for sailors, which are used to build ships. So you get them when you occupy coastal provinces, okay? This, I hadn't realized. It explained something that I'd seen. There used to be a detach damage button on your fleet. Well, apparently now it's been named for repair damage. And what it's always done is you hit the detach damage on a fleet, and you're left with two fleets. The one you have selected is your perfectly healthy fleet, and the one that wasn't selected is your damaged fleet, which was always a bit annoying, because usually what you want to do is detach the damaged ones and then send them to port to repair, so you'd always have to switch your selection. Well, now, when you detach damage, the damaged ones will automatically head to a port to repair, and then reunite with the parent fleet once they're done, which is awesome, actually. So that's really good to know, because often I'd send them to port and then forget about them, they wouldn't actually be doing anything anymore. You can send diplomats to do counter-espionage against someone who's spying on you. Okay, that's fine. You'd have to be really sure that they're actively spying on you to make it worthwhile, but there it is. This is nice. You could only assign naval leaders before when they were docked at a friendly port. Now you can assign naval leaders to ships as long as they're in supply range. Really handy there. Just avoids a little bit of an annoyance, which I appreciate. Yes, you can spend 100 Diplo power now to boost your mercantilism by 1%. It seems, I mean, I think it's good. It's good that we finally have an option to do it manually. There was already an option if you were Catholic and you had 100 papal influence. You could also bump up your mercantilism. I think it might be hard to justify spending 100 Diplo power to boost mercantilism, but it is a way to dump Diplo power if you're ahead of time and you don't currently have a Diplo idea. So it's something. The timeline feature is quite cool. At any point, you can hit that button and see how the game has progressed over time, like a cool little like visual thing. It'll be really nice to do at the end of the game to review entirely how the game went. I think that's nice. Merchant leagues can form trade republics. This is certainly a big one. And yeah, so merchant republics, right? Merchant republics can form trade leagues. And any one province nation can join the trade league. And nations that are part of a trade league give a bunch of trade power to the leader. But the trade league as a whole counts as a free defensive pact. It doesn't take up a relationship slot with all the members of the trade league, although the trade league itself counts as a relationship, basically. And yeah, if anyone attacks anyone in the trade league, everyone gets a defensive call to arms in there. So it's a way for these one province miners to stay alive longer. Meanwhile, trade republics become even more powerful at trade because they take some of the trade power from all the members of the league. I really like this. The trade part of it is like, yeah, okay, that's kind of a neat way for trade republics to do things. I love the fact that this keeps one province miners alive longer. I think it's going to lead to a more interesting gameplay and a more interesting map if these one province minor nations don't get instantly swallowed up within the first 20 years of the game because they're weak and vulnerable. Now they become part of these trade leagues for protection, as well as some other benefits. And it means these little countries stay alive longer, and I think that's a great thing. When the leader of the trade league embargoes someone, everyone in the league embargoes someone, which is cool, does not reduce their trade efficiency. Beautiful. Yeah, so being a trade league leader is really powerful. You get CBs as well. And yeah, trade leagues get 20% more trade power from their ships. Beautiful. Love it. I think it's great. Okay, so that's the end of the paid feature. Now we get into the free features, and there are a lot of them. Better ways to grant your vassal core provinces. Excellent. The loot map mode is actually quite nice. I mean, this is not something I'm usually consciously micromanaging in war, but now that there's a map mode, it makes it better. So when you're sitting in a province belonging to an enemy in war, whether you've occupied it or not, you're constantly looting it from its value. And it's actually a pretty good way to make money at war. Now, it's often, like, it's not necessarily going to lead you to do a profit, but it's a good way to pay for your current standing army if they're not currently having to go, like, hunt down any enemy troops or anything like that. You check to see which provinces still have loot, and you put your army sitting in there, and they pay for themselves maybe while you're waiting for, someone to come at you, or you're waiting for another siege to finish, or something of that nature. So it can help pay for your army a little bit while they're otherwise not doing anything. It's great. Different naval capture thing, different naval morale. They've changed positioning, added engagement width. So, slight tweak to the combat mechanics here. New map mode, states and territories. Which we're going to have to talk about states and territories here, which is this like the only... There must be referenced somewhere else. Ah, yeah, influence new system. All right, so we'll get back to it there. Tags, colonists. Colonists and trade company provinces don't change the religion or culture of the province. Interesting. So... you're going to want to make sure not to add the province to a trade company until the colonist has flipped the religion or the culture, I guess. Admirals have a siege ability that adds blockade efficiency. Not the most critical thing in the world, but assuming it doesn't take away from the rest of their combat points, it actually is quite nice. Need fewer ships to blockade. I do like that. Merchant Marines now give 50% sailors, and press gangs will now give 20% sailor recovery. Right. So these are tweaks to existing ideas. So now that they work with the new sailor system, that's fine. Added mechanics for sailors. Are used when building ships and repairing them. Basically the same as manpower, but for ships. Well, roughly the same. You can continue playing beyond the Endgame if you want, if you're not playing Iron Man. So, you can't get any more achievements, and, the scores won't really matter anymore. But the game no longer has to have a hard ending in 1821 anymore, which is nice. Just a little change. Some people want to see what would happen next. Now they can go. Pirates are more powerful in nodes that have, a monopoly, which is interesting. I think it probably is a good thing to challenge nations that have more monopoly in an area. So, makes pirating a little bit more viable in those areas. I've never been one to use privateering a lot, and I probably should have more, but now I definitely will want to. Anytime you see a node where someone has a very high monopoly in that node, you can send them pirates and get a huge bonus. Obviously, they will then go and defend their node with heavy ships or whatever, but still, pretty nice. The province tooltips with blockading fleets is great, and in particular, I love this. This I've noticed multiple times in our Let's Play. That the blockades now have a cool border to show the blockade. Really happy about that. Okay, states and territories. Where states give most benefits of being non-overseas, while territories have autonomy and is considered to be overseas for many rules. So the world is now divided into these sort of little chunks, state/territory areas, which are areas of 3 to 4 provinces as far as I can tell. And by default, when you take over territory, the new provinces that you take are part of territories. I mean, unless they happen to be falling into the border of one of your existing states, most of the new provinces will be territories instead. Coring those places is half as expensive, but it has a minimum autonomy of 75%, exactly the same as the old overseas, distant overseas provinces were 75% autonomy. Now, as far as I can tell, they don't have the distant overseas penalty anymore, but rather it's been replaced by this idea, and you can turn territories into states, at which point then you have to go and pay the other half of the coring costs in admin. So it doesn't, if you're making states, then you end up paying the same amount of coring costs as before. And there's a slight maintenance cost for making a state as opposed to a territory, although generally it will pay for itself once, the coring is finished and the autonomy has dropped. That's the other thing with the state, is the autonomy will go back to sort of normal. But as far as I can tell, you can make overseas provinces into states. Now, I don't know if that applies to the New World. I haven't experienced that in the game yet. But as far as I can tell, Portugal, which has, in my game, expanded pretty aggressively to North Africa, and in fact has expanded far enough away from its capital that I believe it should be getting distant overseas penalty at that point, does not appear to be getting that distant overseas. So as far as I can tell, you no longer have that weird behavior where if you're a European nation and, you grab something that is considered to be part of Africa or Asia, and it's like, oh, it's 3 provinces away from you, or even worse, it's literally there's just one province that isn't connected to the rest of your blob, now counts as distant overseas, but if you go and conquer that one province, now it's not distant overseas. Well, now you can just, you can create states, administrative states in those areas that make them count as, not distant or just a normal part of your country. As far as I can tell, that's that. There's a little bit more micromanagement, and you are limited to your total number of states depending on your type of government, your government rank. So like empires get more, for example. And also there are, I know, administrative ideas. That specific one, the one called Administrative Ideas, gives you more like maximum states as well, so that you can have a bigger country. I think Expansion Ideas also has it, which makes a lot of sense. So there are ways to increase your state limit if you're looking to blob out more and more and more. And while you can hit that limit, at which point you only have territories, you do have such a reduced coring cost with those territories that it's not the end of the world that you're locked to 75% autonomy, which means I think, if you're just looking to paint the entire world your color, it's sort of a little bit going to be a wash. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the endgame effects will come out to play out. I don't know if this is just going to be extra tedium for no reason. I think overall, it's probably fine. It sort of seems logical. It's almost like an extension of the coring system, right? You take over a province as is, it's kind of crap. Once you core it, then it's part of your country proper, and now it's not crap. But now we've got this in-between state. You can go from uncored to cored territory to a cored state. So it's sort of an in-between. I don't know. Anyway, then there's corruption, which is another value that can increase, and having overextension and lack of religious unity. So you have corruption, which can increase by a variety of events. It can increase, I believe, if you're too far behind in tech compared to your neighbors, and a few other things as well. And having corruption gives you a few penalties here and there, including minimum autonomy. It has to get quite high for you to really notice it. 1 or 2 points of corruption is basically non-existent. It increases all power costs, which is like really bad, right? So having corruption is particularly bad. You can combat it by investing in the budget, although that's very expensive. As far as I can tell, it is extremely expensive to combat corruption by spending out of your budget. Maybe with very high corruption, it decreases faster from a high budget. I'm not sure, because I haven't gone there yet. I haven't had a really high corruption. But one of the ways you can also fight corruption is by having positive stability or being ahead of time in administrative or diplomatic technology. Those are ways that corruption will come down. It does seem like it comes down pretty slowly, but again, corruption doesn't seem to be anything that gives you a lot of corruption super fast. So corruption seems like the sort of thing that builds up very slowly over time and drops very slowly over time. So it's the sort of thing you don't want to let it run away with the game. But otherwise, it might be relatively possible to mostly ignore it, depending on your particular country and situation. Maybe some countries are really, really vulnerable to corruption because of reasons or gameplay styles. I don't know. We'll see. But so far in my Lubeck game, I've only gotten like 1% corruption, which had basically no impact, and I was able to burn it off after a couple of years just of, having high stability and maybe being a little bit ahead of time in some of my techs or something like that. So we'll see how it goes. Yes, you can cheat and add more corruption. Admiral Siege Pip with blockade efficiency. We saw that earlier. Added the decision to form Rome. It's quite the achievement. You need basically all the land around the Mediterranean, like all of France. And I don't remember. Do you need like half of Great Britain? I don't remember. But yeah, that's... It's an interesting decision to form Rome, but it's very cool that it exists. Okay, and then there's a bunch of game balance changes. So these are sort of like free features and then game balance changes. And a lot of these are pretty valuable. So there's a few tweaks here for some of the buildings, just how they changed. That decreases build time, increase force limit instead of reducing ship costs. All right, I like more force limit, can't complain about that. And docks and dry docks increase sailors instead of adding force limit. So that the force limit was moved off of docks into shipyards. And I think I'm happy about this, because the shipyard, it was cool. Like, so this is the building that lets you build ships better, and now it also allows you to build more ships. Excellent. I think that the shipyard has been buffed considerably. And I don't know if I care about the docks and dry docks, because these increase the sailors. And so far in my game, I haven't run into sort of any cap or anything. Like, I've never run short of sailors. Maybe that will change going forward when you have bigger navies and are trying to build more things. We'll see how it goes. So far, I haven't had a shortage of sailors. I suspect that may change later on. But these shipyards are now, like, super awesome. So it doesn't make your ships cheaper. But honestly, that was... I mean, I guess if you're building a lot of heavies, that's more of a concern. But I don't know. This, like, awesome. I mean, I guess the decreased build time isn't a huge deal. I guess it would probably be a more powerful building if it reduced ship cost and gave you force limit, but whatever. I'm fine with it. You can move your capital to any province inside a state, which, to me, assuming you can make all your states, in your overseas provinces just fine. And again, I haven't explored the New World yet to know how states work over there. Then it does give you more flexibility with moving your capital in sort of unexpected ways. And you can always core your capital, which I guess makes sense. Yeah, so you can reform your primitive religion/government. Now, anytime you have a total of 18 tech levels, you don't necessarily need to border a Western country, although apparently in this particular Reformation, you will not get a free tech boost, which is a little bit unfortunate. So you'd still prefer to do it the other way, but it's nice to have an extra option, I suppose. This is probably handy. I hadn't noticed this before, but I guess... See, you can use your or your subject's claims when... threatening war, not declaring war. You can threaten war using your subject's claim. Oh, that's quite cool. Okay. Yeah, I glanced through this earlier and I'd missed exactly what it said there. One province minors that are free cities or trade league members, less likely to buy provinces. That's probably pretty smart. So that, because as soon as they get an extra province, they'll no longer be a free city, and they can't be a trade league member. This, I had not realized was happening in my game, and that has a really big impact on how I'm going to decide to expand as Lubeck here. Because when you had a vassal in the past, a vassal gave you a portion of their income, which was always good, and of course joined you in wars. But that was about it. But apparently, now vassals and marches, which are just a variant of vassals, of merchant republics, so only of merchant republics, will also, I presume also, transfer 50% of their trade power to their merchant republic overlord. Which means in my Lubeck game, if I were to vassalize Denmark, they would give me half their trade power, and they're in the Lubeck trade node, which would mean I would get a lot more trade. I don't need to conquer Denmark to get their trade power, which is important because, as we're going to read right down here, merchant republics can only get so big now. Trade power, transfer trade power no longer costs a relation slot. Now, this often wasn't an issue in regular diplomacy, because usually the people you would ask to transfer trade power were people who you probably already had a relationship with, a royal marriage or an alliance, although now you can go around bullying people who are scared of you to perhaps give you transfer trade power. In addition to that, this becomes a very valid thing to ask in a war deal. Really great. In fact, it used to be a trap when this transfer trade power was introduced and you could ask for that in a peace deal. It was a trap because you do that and then find out, oh, this is tying up a relationship slot. Oh, that sucks. So now it no longer does. Beautiful. I will be using this in war as well. In fact, I probably would have already in my Lubeck game had I known. This is huge. Removed overseas impact on aggressive expansion. Interesting, because overseas impact, I don't know exactly what sense they mean. Do they mean how much my neighbors care when I conquer overseas stuff? In which case, the overseas impact was basically, zero. Germany didn't care if I conquered some state in northern Canada, right? So now, maybe they will more, although there's still distance. Or is it, going to affect how the other, say, Native Americans feel when I take over something in northern Canada? I don't know exactly how to parse this. Overseas impact specifically as a quote. I'm not sure what that means, unfortunately. No longer possible to make vassals and embargo nations they haven't discovered. I guess that's fair. Reverted the region-based discovery mechanic from 1.15 to province-based as before. Okay, so exploration is slightly tweaked. This might have been something that they changed to work a little bit better with their new map sharing. I'm not sure. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, hopefully all the exploration missions still work the way that they did. Very convenient to just send your ships to go off somewhere and do stuff. Okay, here's one that's really going to affect me. Merchant republics that grow over a size of 20 owned provinces now suffer a scaling penalty to their republican tradition. Subject-owned provinces do not count towards this limit. So vassals don't count towards your 20 province limit. So this is something I had found out about because Wiz, Martin Anward, had sent me a tweet mentioning this. And it turns out that it was probably supposed to be in a certain tooltip, and it wasn't. So in my particular pre-release build of the game, as far as I can tell, there was nowhere that told me that this was an issue. So I'm happy that he did, because it's going to affect the planning. And I think this is fine. I kind of dig this with merchant republics, because you're being encouraged to grow vertically, and merchant republics have been buffed in a variety of other ways. I mean, their vassals give them trade power, which is huge. Some of the trade production and trade bonuses have changed. Merchant republics are the only thing that can run a trade league. So merchant republics have been significantly buffed, so I think it's perfectly fine to limit merchant republics to 20 owned provinces, because the theme of merchant republics is trade, not conquest. Of course, if you decide you want to go on a conquest run, you can just change to a different type of republic, or you can intentionally drop your republican tradition enough to stop being a republic, right? Form a what is it called? A republican dictatorship, and then it goes into normal kingdom if your tradition is too low, something of that nature. So, I mean, you can just stop being a merchant republic. But yeah, I think this is groovy, and certainly as Lubeck, I'm going to be looking more to, hey, what can I do to vassalize people and then grow my vassals to effectively control more land, in a sense, and also get more provincial trade power from that. Anyway, that's cool. Aristocrats and merchant republics now increase sailors by 25% instead of 10% land force limits. I mean, merchant republics don't have the estate system. Right, so aristocrats were never the estate system. They also don't have aristocratic ideas. They have plutocratic ideas. Oh! Yeah, they're talking about the faction. The aristocrat faction. As opposed to, so there was the trade faction, the guild faction, or traders faction, guild faction, and the aristocrats faction, which I guess would have given us this. Now it just gives us more sailors, which seems reasonable. I mean, again, so far I haven't experienced a shortage of sailors. So to me, I would prefer more force limit, because again, as Merchant Republic, you have a lot of money, so you can buy a lot of mercs. So you want more force limit to fill up with mercenaries, but that's okay. Halved the size of the Merchant Republic production bonuses. So Merchant Republic still get a production bonus, but less now. But that's because they get a lot of other trade stuff going on, so that's probably fine. Merchant Republics now always give their production bonus to provinces where they have trade power, even if they or someone transferring trade power to them owns the provinces, except for gold. So you get less production bonus, but it's spread more. Although that, still affects outside of our own province, our own country. So, yeah, all right. It maybe turns out to be a wash. I don't know. Now, this is nice. So these next two here deal with the English Parliament. Well, I don't know if other countries can have parliaments. Probably. I mean, England starts with the Parliament. What was happening before, if you didn't start a debate in Parliament, you would get hit on legitimacy if you are a kingdom, or Republican tradition if you are a republic. But now instead it increases corruption, which I think is fine. This is nice. So each seat in government, in the Parliament, when a new issue comes up, presumably now has a 25% chance of backing the issue. So for once, finally, you're not going to open that screen and see 0%, 0 people support it, which always annoyed me. Like, wouldn't some people support this? These are good ideas for my country. Well, now apparently 25% of our seats will support an idea, so you have to work a little bit less to pass something, which is nice because I found it to be kind of a pain in the ass to pass ideas. So now it's a little bit easier to do it. And ignore corruption bribe now increases corruption. Is this an event? Ignore corruption? Oh, ignore corruption bribe. Oh, this is one of the things you can do in Parliament to get a seat to vote for you. So this will give you a boost in corruption, which I guess makes a lot of sense. All right, administrative ideas finisher. I mentioned this earlier. So this is the specific idea group called administrative ideas. The finisher is now +3 states instead of +10% goods produced. A little bit unfortunate for my Lubeck run because I'm limited number of provinces, so I don't need the bonus to states, and I would have preferred the goods produced. But perhaps really helpful for other nations who are looking to expand quite a bit. Oh, expansion finisher is the decrease in state maintenance. I thought the expansion finisher was more states, but apparently I am wrong. It is less state maintenance, which will save you some money if you're a large, expansive nation. It certainly fits the theme very well. Military Zeal Act no longer boosts discipline. I don't remember what idea military zeal was in. Hang on, let me U4. Which one is that? Is it from quality? It's the act if you finished all quality and religious. If you finished all the quality and religious ideas, then you could pass this act, which I guess would cost you, 1 military power per month to maintain, and it would give you plus 2.5% morale and plus 10% morale, 2.5% discipline and 10% morale. So now it no longer boosts discipline. So presumably it just has the 10% morale boost. So I guess they nerfed that a little bit because it's quite good. Add new religion. Rebels with unrest below 0% will now still revolt if they get a supporter. So presumably this is a supporter from like someone spying on you who's supporting rebels. Now they can rebel more, which might be good because sometimes there's no way to know if a rebel group, what percentage they... I'm not sure. I guess that's what that means. I think it's if you're doing the spy action, then even rebel groups who might have not had a chance to rebel before now do. Which I guess it makes spying a little bit stronger because you might be especially tempted to, you know, support separatists or even religious rebels, depending on your goals, for example. Now that opens up those options, I suppose. I'm not necessarily parsing this correctly, though. Okay, subjects. Reduced liberty desire from tariffs. Wow, so it's going to be a lot easier to boost tariffs on your overseas, your colonial governments. That's interesting. And this one, thank goodness, reduced the cost of decreasing tariffs to a sane level. I agree, because it was 100 admin power to do it. Now it's 25 admin power. Because when you got an uppity colonial government from having too high tariffs, you would have to dump a ridiculous number of admin power in there to bring tariffs down to a level where they wouldn't complain. Now it's not quite as ridiculous, so I'm happy about that. Technology group, Sub-Saharan got renamed to West African because we got two new groups, Central African and East African, because of course the African map has been radically redesigned with a lot more countries and provinces. Mercenaries can now be built in overseas provinces. That is fantastic. It is I mean, I guess it's a buff to sort of everyone. It's a nerf to natives, I gotta say that. It's a buff to everyone who wants to do colonial stuff. And of course, the new territories, I guess they had to do this because territories count basically as overseas provinces in all their current rules now. So it might be crazy not to do it. But it was also, it used to be counterintuitive. You'd always be surprised when you'd like go over to North America and you go to build some mercs and you're like, oh, I can't build them here? Oh. So now I think it's maybe a little bit more, I don't know, it's gonna be a little bit more intuitive that everything just works the same everywhere. It's fine. I mean, I don't know what mercenaries you're hiring overseas, but let's just pretend. Okay, this is probably another good change, and something that's probably going to affect my Lubeck game. Because occupying provinces without forts basically gives you no real war score. It's really only occupying forts that give you war score, based on, you know, the total percentage of forts of the whole country that you've taken. But now, if you don't have very many forts, then unfortified provinces are worth more war score. I'm not sure how the math works out, you know, doesn't explain it here. But yeah, so again, that affects my Lubeck game, because right now I'm at like, I think I'm at 13 provinces and I only have one fort. So I suspect that my non-fort provinces are worth more war score, which means that's really bad for me at this point because it's really easy to occupy a lot of my territory and get a lot of war score without having to siege a fort. So I'm going to have to fix that. Ship blockading now gives naval tradition. That's cool. Blockaded percent changes the math. Okay. Okay, yeah, this was sort of a bug fix where if the war leader sent a peace deal that would result in a stab hit if refused, which is to say, generally speaking, a very good peace offer, less than the war score, or I think if they had maybe 100%, anyway, there's a few different ways to generate a stab hit peace deal, and if the person refused to take it, then the war leader's call for peace timer used to be reset, but not the allies of the war leader, so that would be kind of crazy. So that is nice to tweak that. Local autonomy no longer affects build time, which is lovely. Thank you very much for that. Trade conflict CB no longer allows you to take land, revoke cores, or release vassals nations in peace. This last bit is a little bit unfortunate. It'd be nice if your trade conflict CB could still be used to break up a country a little bit, even accepting that you can't just take land. Now, you can't take any land. Presumably that includes returning cores, which again is a little bit unfortunate. It certainly makes sense, I suppose, to, you know, that this type of CB may not be used to just like forced vassalization, may not be forced to force them to just cede generic land, but it'd be nice if you can get them to return cores, maybe still with it. But I can see the theme, and it is a little easier to generate trade conflict CBs now because, especially with the merchant republics, the trade league because the trade leader gets the CB automatically if anyone has got a trade conflict in the league. So yeah, victory cards. Who cares about that? Maximum power not scales with all power costs as well. Yeah, that's good. So this is the presumably the amount of power that you can store in a category. If you're playing a Western tech nation, you're used to seeing 999 as the limit of how many power points you can have in any one category. But if you were in a different tech nation, the maximum power scaled with the percentage increase of your technologies. But now it sounds like anything that affects all power cost. So presumably this might be something for corruption, because corruption increases your percentage power cost for everything. So it might also scale your max. That way your max power is always sort of a ratio of how much all your stuff costs. So you don't end up in a weird situation where you can't store enough power to do something because the cost of doing the thing is higher than your cap. It's something like that. I assume. I don't know. And Ray's province now actually increases unrest. That's probably makes a lot of sense. If you've just burnt a province to the ground, the people who are there should probably be pissed. So kind of a nerf to hordes, I suppose. I wonder if you like raise a province and then give the province back to the original owner, is it still full of unrest? In which case, that's really funny. That's really funny. Oh, all right, I'm gonna have to try that. Okay, then we get in some AI changes. AI is going to be smarter in a variety of ways, which is good. All right, excellent. That's a little more of a bug fix than just the AI being smarter. So I like that. Better pathfinding, yada yada yada. There's no longer cheats here. There is a place where they've added a cheat for the AI. Yeah, spend its treasury better. I think that's good. So right here, AI can now cheat on maintenance level for border and capital forts. There is a define to disable this if you don't want that, and it won't mothball these. So the AI, basically, for their capital and any forts on their border, they will no longer mothball them, but they might still be able to sort of internally mothball them so that they're not paying the extra maintenance. So they might be paying half maintenance or something that's not actually mothballed. And that's probably to deal with the fact that the AI doesn't have like human level of intuition of being able to read a situation and realize a war might trigger, like there's a possibility for some guy to just suddenly jump on my country. I mean, I don't think it's a problem between the AI nations. I think it's a problem between human players abusing the AI by doing like maybe a no CB war or this or that or whatever. When they see low maintenance on the border, and the AI might not be aware of these types of threat. So the way to combat this particular type of threat is to make it so that those border forts always have their effectively don't get mothballed, even if the AI has, you know, quote unquote mothball them to save maintenance. So this makes it so the AI doesn't go quite as broke, while doesn't get just sort of ninja'd in an unexpected way. So, I mean, you never like to see that the AI cheats about whatever. And there are very few of those in EU4. As far as I know, the only things are the AI, I believe, always gets an extra relationship slot. However, it saves that extra relationship slot for the player. It basically means the AI is mostly playing normal rules for relationship slots, but if the player really wants to ally them, they can. I mean, unless that's changed at some point, but I'm pretty sure that's still the case. They also get a slight boost to their general generation. So that's one of the reasons AIs always have slightly better generals, is because they do get slightly more bonuses when they generate a general. So theirs is going to be a little bit better in general. They also, their map vision is different. Now, they don't always... They intentionally don't act like they have perfect vision, but they tend to, because, you know, dealing with unknowns is very tricky in AI. So instead, I believe they let the AI be aware of everything that's going on in the map, but they only take actions on things that they are supposed to know about. So that's, you know, so I don't know if they can hunt down your stack from across the map. Well, now with the forts, they really don't do that anyway, because they can't usually reach. So there's a couple ways the AI just cheats a little bit to compensate for the fact that it is an AI and not a human. And I suspect that was the reasoning there. And I think this is probably fine. As the player, it's like, you know what? Suck it up and deal. That's just part of the reality over there. And apparently, there used to be something with fort maintenance adjacent to wasteland, which is a little bit weird. Maybe it was a side effect of implementing this because it considered to be part of the border. And so I suspect that this is more of a fix to an earlier change they made here, but I don't know. And then other things. They're going to be trying to protect straits and different things like that. I like it. Some UI changes over here. I'm not sure that any of these are particularly worth talking about. And, you know, new ledger page, all right, that's fine. Straights get color-coded if they can be blocked or can't be blocked, which is kind of cool. Estates in the outliner, I guess that's fine, sure. Yeah, a little extra text over here, I like that. A little more tooltip info and fixes and different things like that. You know, just a little nice quality of life thing. Some of this may be more or less noticeable, but we'll just go on. They're not game play changes. User modding, different things you can mod on. New triggers, some of which are just, you know, the new states mechanic, that sort of thing. So script here, I think these are changes that aren't modding. I think they are just part of like changes to decisions and events and that sort of stuff. Ooh, country that is reduced to only Iceland can now form Iceland. Very cool. Granada can now form Spain if they fulfill other requirements. Oh, that's very cool. USA can now get the clergy estate for their theocracy. I guess that makes sense. Rebalance some events over here. All right, fine. Added conquest of Alexandria. Triggered modifiers for Coptics. Okay. Oh, a bunch of new ideas for, these are mostly, if not all, African nations that were added in with their more varied maps, so that's excellent. Different things with their bookmarks. Not correctly part of our So a little bit of tweaks to the existing map. Also, lots of changes to provinces in Ireland and Africa, certainly. Reduced Lithuanian starting development. Oh, interesting. Lithuania is very powerful. Now they've been nerfed slightly. Huh. Welsh culture tag is now in the British group. Oh, that's good. That's very handy. So a little bit of changes. I mean, you might want to read through this and see some more things, but these are the big changes. Variety of bug fixes, some of which may or may not be, you know, noticeable in your average game. I don't know, but that's it. And of course, if you don't know it already, saves from version 1.15 are not compatible with 1.16. So if you have an existing game in 1.15 that you want to keep playing, what you can do in Steam is you right-click on the Europa Universalis 4 item in your Steam games list, go to Properties, go to the, I think it's the Betas tab, and there'll be a pull-down menu where you can roll back to a previous version. Obviously, if you roll back to 1.15, you won't get, well, any of these patch changes, neither will you be able to have Mare Nostrum enabled. But you can go back to your pre-Mare Nostrum game and finish it if you would like. And that's my look at the patch note. I probably missed something that was super important or misunderstood something, but overall, there we have it. So we're going to be using these in our Lubeck game going forward, but I did want to point out one more time that I didn't have access to all these patch notes before, so there's a lot of stuff I did not know about. So really curious to see how this is going to pay off going forward. But at this time, there's still some videos that have not gone live yet from before the patch notes that have come out. So there's still going to be, I'm still going to be in the dark about a few of these mechanics. Thanks for watching. See you next time.